A powerful Russian force numbering 100,000 troops is determined to capture Pokrovsk, but the town is heavily defended by drones, artillery, infantry, and even a few Leopard 2A4 tanks belonging to the bad luck 155th Mechanized Brigade of Ukraine. According to Euromaidan Press media outlet, instead, the Russians are trying to surround and cut off Pokrovsk, and that means capturing Rodynske and then cutting west across the main north-south road, the T0515, threading past Dobropillya and Rodynske into Pokrovsk. There's only one other main road into Pokrovsk, just west of the town, and it's in danger of being overrun too. The Russian center group of forces, including the 51st Combined Arms Army, spent a year marching on Pokrovsk from the ruins of Avdiivka, 40 kilometers to the east. It was a costly march, and it ground to a halt on Pokrovsk's outskirts around the new year. But the Kremlin mobilized hundreds of thousands of fresh troops and deployed many of them to the Pokrovsk sector, speeding into battle on motorcycles or marching on foot. The Russians suffered horrendous casualties while probing Pokrovsk's defenses, but the effort paid off last month when the Russian 9th Motor Rifle Brigade, or an adjacent unit, finally found a wide gap in the Ukrainian line around Rodynske village, Euromaidan Press says. Now Rodynske itself is the main battleground. While the Russian Air Force's CAB glide bombs pummel the village, the 51st CAA waits for a chance to advance. The command of the enemy's center operational grouping on the Pokrovsk direction completes preparatory actions, actively accelerating preparations for the assault on Pokrovsk. The Ukrainian Center for Defense Strategies reported. The push through Rodynske and then into Pokrovsk will be a bloody one for both sides, but especially for the Russians. We anticipate a spike in Russian losses, For Intelligence Insight explained, but also the possibility of a faster tempo of advances, aiming to delay Pokrovsk's fall as long as possible and inflict as many casualties as possible on the Russians in exchange for the town. The Ukrainian army has reinforced the area around Rodynske with elements of the 142nd Mechanized Brigade, which recently received German-made Leopard 1A5 tanks. Even with reinforcements, the Ukrainian force in and around Pokrovsk is outnumbered by tens of thousands of troops, Euromaidan Press says. Where Russia has maintained its high pace of recruitment by spending lavishly on enlistment bonuses, Ukraine has struggled to recruit or draft enough new troops for its weary brigades. According to preliminary data from the Finance Ministry cited by the Moscow Times, the deficit increased by 1.2 trillion rubles or $15 billion in July alone, and expenditures jumped to 3.9 trillion rubles or $49 billion. The data shows Russia's war machine consuming the state itself. Unlike previous conflicts, Moscow can't fund this war indefinitely, and Western allies now have concrete proof that sustained pressure works. The new figures reveal a grim picture of stagnation, overspending, and war at all costs priorities. According to Reuters, government spending rose more than 20% in the first 7 months of 2025, while revenues grew just 2.8%. That gap is mainly driven by ballooning military costs. What makes the alarm even more telling is that the warning comes directly from Russia's central bank. It now forecasts zero growth by December, down from 4.5% last year. Euromaidan Press says, so far this year, Russia has spent 25.2 trillion rubles, or $320 billion. a staggering increase from pre-war spending levels when the annual federal budget totaled around $220 billion in 2021. As Bloomberg reports, signs of crisis are now visible across different sectors as coal mining companies suffer losses, oil, gas, and metallurgy companies see a decline in profits. The automotive industry significantly cuts production due to weak demand. Productivity in civilian sectors is falling fast. The Moscow Times reported in July that Russian car makers have all shifted to a 4-day work week to preserve existing jobs due to diminishing demand, high interest rates, and a lack of affordable financing tools for buyers. Russia's aviation industry, once a symbol of national pride, has delivered just one of 15 promised passenger aircraft this year. Sanctions, oil price caps, and labor shortages are eroding Russia's economic foundation. Yet Moscow shows no intention of scaling back its invasion. A recession with consequences far beyond Russia's borders now looms. The signs are clear. Western sanctions, shifting energy markets, and export controls are having an impact. But they're not enough on their own. The Kremlin is willing to sacrifice every civilian sector to keep the war machine running. That's why Ukraine's battlefield resilience and sustained Western support remain essential. Economic pressure may hurt Russia, but it won't stop the war on its own. For Western policymakers, these numbers prove that economic pressure is working, but they also show why military aid remains crucial to finish what sanctions started. Russia's budget crisis gives Ukraine a strategic window, but only if allies simultaneously maintain economic and military pressure. The anger of Russian citizens who remain free against the Russian authorities is growing.